Hi guys, I hope you're doing well and I hope you're enjoying this year's Texplore so far. So in today's session, we're going to build on the code that we started in the previous session, where we basically just built a chatbot that answers culture-related questions given by the user. Now, in the end of our session, we noticed a problem in our code, which is the fact that even when the user asked for a mathematical proof, the chatbot gave this proof, which is not what we want. So we wanted a chatbot that is only focused on giving answers related to culture questions, nothing related to physical sciences or politics or whatnot. So in this session, we're going to learn how to fix this and how to make sure that our chatbot adopts the persona or the behavior that we want him to adopt. So first of all, I'm going to import something else that we're going to use in this code, which is DQ. So from collections, import DQ. So DQ is basically just a double-ended queue. So it's like a list, but it's quicker because it lets us quickly add and remove messages from both ends. And basically, we're going to use it later on in our code to maintain a short chat history between the user and the chatbot. So this is going to be very efficient and useful for us later on. Now, we're going to keep the same flow that we used last time. So we're going to start by printing a welcome message and some instructions, followed by the API key that the user will be prompted to enter, and the model that we're going to use, the model of Mistral AI that we're going to use. Now, I'm going to introduce a new concept, which is prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is basically when we carefully craft the instructions that the model will see. So basically, this message object that we sent here, it defines the behavior that the bot should have. So you're a friendly cultural assistant. So we're gonna redo this message object in a way that is much clearer, more structured, and more professional using what we call prompt engineering. So this is just for the code to be more structured. So prompt engineering. Okay. So basically, we're going to use five main variables. The first one is role, and role is basically just a variable that explains what the persona of the chatbot is. So in our case, we want the chatbot to be friendly, precise, etc. So we're going to tell the chatbot how it should behave. So you are a friendly, precise cultural assistant for quick, factual guidance. So we don't want him to, or we don't want the chatbot to give us too many unnecessary details, something quick, straightforward, easy to understand, etc. Now, the second variable is task. Um, Task basically, so what we're doing here, in case you didn't understand, we're gonna use five variables: role, task, constraints, style and output format. And then these five variables that we're gonna use, we're gonna put them in the prompt that we will give later on here. So instead of this sentence that lacked clarity, now we're using five variables to define in details what we want from the chatbot. Then these five variables, we will put them in the sentence that will be sent to the chatbot to tell him how to behave. So we're going to see how to do that in a bit. Now, task is basically the job of your chatbot. So I'm gonna open a parenthesis because I'm gonna send here something a bit long. So answer cultural questions clearly and briefly. Now, as we said, we don't want too many details. So we're gonna tell him or we're gonna tell it what its priorities should be. So prioritize accuracy, define terms, and we're gonna tell him, for instance, to add sorry, okay, and add one actionable tip when helpful. So when the user asks the bot a question, he's gonna answer clearly, briefly, being accurate, define, my bad, defining any technical terms that might be needed, and adding a tip if it's helpful for the user. Now, so basically in role, we specified what the persona of the chatbot is. In task, we defined its job. Now, constraints, in this variable, we're gonna explain what the constraints of this bot is. So what should this bot never do, or what should it avoid? So this is what we're gonna put here. So first of all, and most importantly, we don't want the bot to fabricate references. If we ask for a reference and the bot can't give it to us, maybe you've noticed this in ChatGPT, for example. Sometimes we ask for a reference, we get the reference, but then when we go to check it, we get an empty link or a fake link or a link that's not working. So we're gonna ask the chatbot to not fabricate references. So do not fabricate references. And if the bot is unsure, then just say so briefly. And we're gonna ask, or we're gonna explain to the bot what to avoid. So avoid policy, medical, legal advice, etc. Legal advice. And we're gonna ask the bot to keep it short because, I mean, it's just a preference, you know? So keep answers under, say, 200 words when possible. So short, precise, and straight to the point. So here we put the constraints that the bot should abide by, like nothing related to policies, nothing medical, legal, etc. And under 200 words. So we want something short. I mean, obviously you can change that according to your preferences. Now, after constraints, the next variable is style. Now, style basically just defines the way our bot will be talking, the tone it will use, etc. And this will give the bot an aspect of consistency. It will make it seem like I'm having a chat with a real human. So if you notice with ChatGPT, sometimes when you use a different mode or when you open a new chat, the tone of ChatGPT is different, but it stays consistent throughout the whole chat. This is because of this variable. So the style variable, we're gonna set the tone. So tone, warm, concise, non-patronizing. Okay, so I'm also gonna tell the chatbot to keep it simple. So use simple sentences and neutral vocab. Okay. Next, the last variable is basically the output format. So in the output format, we're gonna tell the chatbot in which structure it should answer. So in which structure should the output be? So output format. So we're gonna tell him basically answer using this structure. We're gonna start by an empty line because if you notice the way it will go, Mone, you're gonna have chatbot, then 2 points, and then here the answer. So we're going to start with an empty line. So the chatbot will start by answering phoneme. Okay, so first, so 1, and then he will give us the direct answer. So direct answer. Let's say 2 to 4 sentences. In total, the whole thing should be no longer than 200 words. And then followed by كمان a new line. 2. You will see when we do examples, it will be much clearer. 2. Optional bullet points مثلا if needed to highlight the answer, anything in the answer. So مثلا we're going to tell him a maximum of 3 bullet points. Next line, and then 3. One follow-up question on the user intent. And yeah, that's it. So هون what we did is we told the chatbot how its output should be, what its format is. So the chatbot will start by وكمان it is يعني we put numbers, so when the output format will be of the form 1, and the chatbot will start by answering the question directly. 2, giving optional bullet points if needed. 3, asking the user a follow-up question. So كمان here the output format, it's your choice how you want the format to be. So here it's just what I did. It's just what I think would fit in this case, but you can choose the output format that you want. So let's summarize what you did again. So we defined prompt engineering. It's basically we're crafting the instructions that the model will see. So it's the role that the chatbot should have, its job, here it's persona, يعني in this meaning, its job, constraints it should abide by, what's the style, the tone that it should have, etc. Should it use a complex language, a simple one? Should it be biased? Should it be neutral, etc.? And what is the format of the output? So this is our way of just crafting the behavior of this chatbot that we're going to be implementing. So after I define these 5 variables, I want to put them all in one phrase, because at the end, this is what I want to arrive to. So I want to replace this sentence with something much clearer and that is more precise. So I'm gonna build the system prompt, يعني this prompt, we're gonna call it system prompt. So system underscore prompt. So this is the variable in which I'm gonna store the sentence that dictates how the bot should behave, and that includes all of these 5 variables that I defined. So first of all, I'm gonna obviously I want to do a string, but as we said, I'm in the system prompt, I'm gonna use these 5 variables that I defined. And we learned how to do that previously. So we do an F string, meaning we put F before the string, and whenever we want to reference a previous variable defined, we just put it between these 2 quotations. So we're gonna start by the role, then 2 empty spaces, then task, and I'm gonna give the chatbot its task, so it's job. So we started by giving him his persona, how it should behave, what it's doing, etc. Then its job or its task. Then between each variable, like between each point and the other, I'm gonna skip 2 lines to make it clear and better aesthetically, basically. Now, after the task, we're gonna precise the constraints. . Here, the \n, it's just we're just starting or going to a new line. So it's just aesthetically so that it looks better, nothing more. So what I'm doing here, I started by defining the role basically, then task, and I'm giving him its task, then constraints, and I'm giving him the constraints. And between each one and the other, there are two new lines. So like this, and then between this part and the part where I put the variable, there's one new line. So it will be something like this. Okay. So this is how the system prompt will look like. Okay. So don't get confused because of the new lines or anything. It's just for the format, but you should get like understand the idea behind it. So here we started by the rule. Now we're telling him what its job, its task is. We're telling him what the constraints are. Then we're gonna tell him what style it should use. So style, new line, and then style. And then output formats. Output format, and then new line, output format. I just want to make sure that I'm recording 1 second. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so that's it basically. So here we built the system prompt. So we built the prompt that we're gonna be putting here, in which we're explaining to the chatbot how it should behave, what rules it should abide by, etc. Okay, so this prompt will be the first message that the model will see, and so it will define for the model how it should act like. Now we're gonna build the context, basically. So we're gonna use, okay, we're gonna define the memory, basically. The memory is just gonna be some information about the user in general, like any user, so that the model has an idea of some facts about the user, what the user wants, what the user's preferences are, etc. So this is what you call context framework. Context framework is just the call. So whenever we call the model, we start by giving him the instructions, but then afterwards we have to give him some reminders about the users. So this is what we're going to be doing here. So memory, just some facts about the user. So we're going to put them in a list, and it's going to be a list of strings. So for instance, we're going to tell him that the user prefers concise technical explanations. And the user is comfortable, for example, with using bullet points, with short bullet points. So here in the memory, this is what you call the context framework. So it's just we're giving the bot a certain context about the user, what the user wants, etc. Okay. And we're also going to give the chatbot a history of the last few messages that were exchanged between the bot and the user, so that the bot or the model has an idea of the context, like where is this conversation, at what stage is the conversation between the user and the bot, etc. So this is what we call context framework. Context framework. It just gives the bot a context of how the conversation is going, at what stage it is, etc. So we started by reminding him of the user preferences, and here it's just a history of some past messages between the user and the bot. So we're going to use ZQ max len equal to 6. So basically here what you're doing is we're restoring the past 6 messages that occurred between the user and the chatbot so that the model has an idea of how the conversation is flowing or what previous questions were asked, etc. Okay. So, like we said, we started by telling the model how it should behave. Then we gave the model a context of how the conversation is going, what the user wants, etc. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure on top of these prompts that we're gonna give to the model, we want to make sure that the question asked by the user is appropriate, is related to culture. So to do that, we use what we call a guardrails function. So this function will just check if the user's message contains any culture-related keywords. So if the user's question contains any of these keywords, then our code will proceed and the question will be answered and everything. If this question doesn't contain any culture-related keyword, it means that it's not in the topic, and so the chatbot cannot respond to this question. So this is what you call a guardrails function. So guardrails function. Okay. So we're gonna define a new function, as we said, and in this function, we're just gonna make sure that the question that was entered by the user is an appropriate question, is a question that is related to culture. So it's an answer that, it's a question, excuse me, that the chatbot should be able to respond to. So we're gonna call it enforce culture only. And it's going to take one argument, which is the user's message, basically. So user message. So this is a function that takes one argument. And what it does is that it makes sure that the question that was asked, so this argument contains a certain keyword that we will specify. So we're going to make a list of what keywords are acceptable, basically. So some culture keywords, we're gonna say culture, art, music, literature. This is not how we type literature. Literature. Tradition. What else can we add? Heritage, festival, custom, society, sorry. Language, dance, uh, ritual, belief, museum, history, film, painting, uh, architecture, sculpture, I mean, you can add whatever keyword related to culture that you can think of. These are just the ones that came to mind, but like you can add any keyword that might be related to culture. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna check if any of these keywords were used by the user. If not, then we're gonna return an error message, or maybe not an error message, but a message explaining that the question sent is inappropriate and the bot cannot reply to this question, basically. So if not any, meaning that if whatever condition we're gonna put here doesn't work for any, and so we're gonna do keyword and user underscore message for keyword and culture underscore keywords. So what's happening here? We're doing a for loop. We're checking each word in here. We're checking each word in the user message. So the argument that was given is the question of the user. We're gonna check each word in this message, and we're gonna check if this word belongs to this list. So the user asks a question, we take this question to this function. We check each word inside this message, and we check if it belongs to the list. Okay? If none of the words of the message belong to the list, then there is a problem. If, for example, the question asked is not related to culture, it doesn't contain any of these keywords, then we have a problem. And so if this condition is met, meaning if none of the words match any word of the list, then the question isn't related to culture. So if this happens, we're going to send the user a message explaining that the question asked is not related to culture. So we're going to reply with this assistant only answers culture related questions. So please, we're going to ask the user to rephrase the question in a way that it includes any keyword related to culture. So please rephrase your question to focus on arts, traditions, heritage, history, or any other cultural topics. Okay? So what we did here is, okay, sinon, return none. So what we did in this loop is that we ran a keyword check. So in the question that was sent by the user, we checked each word of this question, and we checked if this word corresponds to any of the culture keywords that we set. If we tried them all and we couldn't find any, this is what this line means. It means if we tried to match each word in the user message to any word in this list, but we couldn't find any, we failed. So we sent this answer to the user. Now, if this isn't the case, it means that we found at least one word in the question that matches this list. So this means that the question is culture related. In this case, we're not going to return anything, meaning that we will allow the bot to proceed. We will allow the bot to just answer like it normally would for any question, basically. So what happens is, if we can't find anything related to culture in the question, then we're going to return this message instead of calling the API. If it does match, we don't do anything, meaning that the code will proceed and will call the API and will behave normally as expected. Okay? Now here, something that we missed is we're gonna do dot lower in case, for example, the user types art with an uppercase A or whatever, it will still take it as a keyword. So we just ignore uppercase, lowercase, etc., etc. So now we're done with all of this. We're just gonna modify the while loop. So I'm gonna summarize what we did so far. We did what we call prompt engineering. It's a way for us to just detail the system prompt. What is the system prompt? This is what the system prompt was in our first recording. And as we noticed in the examples, it failed. It did not work. We asked a mathematical proof and it was given to us. So in order to fix this issue, we use what we call prompt engineering. So this is what we did here. We gave 5 variables in which we clearly explained the persona, the job constraints, the tone, the vocab it should use, the format of the output, etc. And we put them all in one sentence. And we organized the sentence basically just using new lines, etc. But we stored them in one variable, and it's one string in total. Now, what we did next is we offered the chatbot some context. So we gave the chatbot or the model some memory about the user and history of the past chats between the user and the chatbot. And here we made or we built a guardrails function where basically we defined a list of culture keywords, and for any question that is sent by the user, we run it through this code. We check if any of these keywords is found. If none of the keywords is found, then we return a warning message stating that the question asked is not related to culture. And so, my bad. Okay. And so by doing this, we will not proceed, the code will not proceed by the API call. So like we saw here, the code proceeds with an API call where it calls Mistral and we get the answer back, etc. In case the question is not appropriate, in case it is not culture related, then instead of running this API call, we will directly return this warning message and we will not proceed with the API call. If a keyword is found, we return none, meaning that we just let the code proceed. We don't return anything, we don't do anything, and we let the code proceed. So now we're gonna proceed with the while loop. Now, we're gonna keep this as it is. So the user inputs a question. We check if what was inputted by the user is the word exit. If it is, then we just print goodbye and we terminate the loop and we terminate the whole code basically. Now we're gonna check, after checking if it's an exit message, we're gonna check if the question is appropriate, if it's a culture-related question. So we're gonna run the function guardrails, like the enforce culture only. So enforce culture only. This is the question, the function that we defined earlier, and we're gonna run it on the question that was asked by the user. Now, as we said, this function either returns a string or it doesn't return anything, but it might return something. So if it does, we need to store it in a variable. So here we're gonna store the guardrails reply basically. So